quite a presentation about types of analytics. You will see in the presentations a few different types of analytics. I skipped that. I will just try and speak about corporate performance and analytics. So 3 subjects. My introduction, I'll touch on organization, processes, culture and behavior quickly. And then we have the presentations. Not sure if this is the last version of the presentation, Preet. Sorry about that. Anyway, we have Renzo Rondag, is that right, from DSM. He will pick up the corporate strategy and will develop what he's doing in terms of analytics in his plant. Then we'll go to Jared Whitty from Curare, who will explain the beginning of his journey. And then we'll turn to Bill Schuler from BASF, and he will show an application on reliability, safety, HSE, which is also a very interesting application of analytics. So we'll see a few different types of applications, and then we have the panel, and I'll prime the panel with a few items. So let's see. Okay, so this is the stuff I wanted to skip. Doesn't matter. I'd like to speak briefly about this idea of how the link between strategy and operations or execution works. And to me, the key aspect there is governance. That is where the alliance happens. So if regulators and shareholders define objectives and regulations, that will impact the strategy of the enterprise. And so with this strategy, we go to work, we get budget, we get priorities, we get resources, and it's the governance, which is in itself an iterative process that I will not detail here, but basically this is going to make sure that this strategy gets executed and translated into priorities and directives that business and management will execute and then collect feedback and results about, so that in the governance process we can compare if we did what we wanted to do. And that feedback then goes back also to strategy, because we can adjust our strategy based on what we learned about what we did. So this is really, I think, a key process to master very well if you want to compare if your strategy leads to what you want to. And in this case, we're going to look at the role of analytics in there. I'll go through a few examples, and I found this example extremely interesting. I took this from peers of us, if you will, McKinsey. It's about operational excellence. Operational excellence, there are a few studies. There is one in pharma that shows that you can save enormously if you make sure to be among the best performers. And then there is this other study by McKinsey that says that world-class producers have 95 to 98% availability, but not necessarily high maintenance cost. And so they make the right decisions about what do I spend on maintenance, where do I spend it, and where do I make the savings. And here you see how analytics can help analyzing what you do. Now, this is not really real-time analytics. This is long-term. This is a long-range study. So we start with a plant here that has a certain production efficiency, and it has a certain maintenance cost on this axis. And then I start making savings on maintenance. And you see that the cost goes down, but the efficiency goes down as well, right? Because I go to the left. And then you say, oh, that's not the right thing to do. So what do I need to do? Well, I actually need to ramp up my maintenance activities. And so the cost goes up, but the efficiency doesn't really follow right away. It's lagging behind. And then the cost goes further up, and now I start recovering some efficiency. So see, this is an interesting application of analytics, and you can, of course, you can do it for all your plants. And I know a few companies, amongst others, CEMEX in Mexico, cement company, looking at their plant efficiencies this way, very high level, with a lot of very high view, long-term view. There's one application of analytics that has an impact on corporate performance. Another idea that I want to submit to you is, I learned this from a pharmaceutical company. I had to anonymize it. Basically, what you see on the horizontal lines are the sites or the business units. And you see vertically the different KPIs. They're grouped. And so different plants have different types of performance depending on the KPI. So what you'd like to do, of course, is that the good plants help the less well-performing plants to get better. And maybe we can also learn from the mistakes from the less well-performing plants, right? So this is a culture thing, and it's not easy to make people buy into this, because they need to trust each other. They need to be able to speak up and admit that they're not doing very well in some areas. So there is a whole cultural aspect to this. But once this starts working and people start supporting each other, and you get a distributed network of experts helping each other all over the world, different plants, you get something that is really performing. So this looks a little bit red still, but... And then a final example is analytics on asset information. Interestingly, we were just talking about that at breakfast. The asset information database, or whatever you want to call it, the engineering information database, when you compare it to the actual state of the plant, it can be more or less up to date. And the more up to date, the more accurate it is, the better the decisions you make when it gets really critical. When there is a critical issue, you need to look at what the situation of your plant is. You could make major mistakes. And the mistake that you see on the picture in the background, everyone knows this picture probably, it's the BP accident. This is what happens when you don't have the right information. So you can do analytics on how accurate and how up-to-date is my asset information. And that can have a major impact on reliability and safety. We'll see a few other examples from the gentleman. Finally, I want to make this point about sustainable change. Once you start applying different ways of working, if you start introducing new methodologies, new tools, you sometimes get cultural issues. And we spoke about that briefly yesterday as well. Part of the culture is conscious, and it is accessible to our logical mind, so we can talk about it. I agree, I don't agree, why do I don't agree, how do we do that? But part of it is unconscious. It's not the way I've been doing this. I don't feel comfortable because I'm a chemical engineer, I'm not an IT guy. And what Michel from Dow said, people get grumpy. They can't express it in words because it is subconscious. So that part of the culture also needs to be addressed. And today we have the tools, there are scientific tools to address that. This is a model of behavior of teams. I won't go into the detail, but just to tell you that there are scientific ways to address these things. And we can both coach behavior and attitude, and we can change culture if it needs to be. And there are ways to do that properly.